Currently, it is 47 degrees here on the campus of St. Louis Community College at Florissant Valley. I'm Jell with your noon news update. A man is wounded following a shooting outside a West Side Missionary Baptist in St. Louis. Police say the victim was found shot yesterday in the 4600 block of Page Boulevard. The man was hospitalized and his condition isn't known. It isn't clear if the man had a connection to the church. A small fire is to blame for causing the evacuation of the Nordstrom store at the St. Louis Galleria. Authorities say paper caught fire in a duct yesterday above the shoe department. No one was injured, but people were evacuated and allowed back in about an hour later. Authorities are identifying the man killed in a shooting outside a bar in North St. Louis County. Police say Cameron Fowler was gunned down earlier Sunday in the parking lot of the Mystic Grill in Florissant. The incident is under investigation. St. Louis County Police are warning drivers about leaving their cars unattended to warm up. Authorities say more than a dozen cars have been stolen in the area while they were warming up. County police are now considering issuing tickets to drivers who leave their cars alone running. And more details are being revealed about the deal the XFL made with the St. Louis Convention and Visitors Bureau. The Football League announced last week that St. Louis is one of 8 cities to be awarded a franchise. The city will receive $100,000 from the XFL for all 5 home games played at the Dome at America's Center. The league will receive 100% of ticket sales, and the city will receive all revenue from concession and catering sales. That sums up the news, but now on to the weather. Today, it is sunny, a high of 52, low of 37. Tomorrow, it will be sunny with a high of 50, low of 33. Thursday, rainy, high of 48, low of 43. Friday, showers, high of 45, low of 35. And Saturday, mostly sunny, high of 46, low of 33. So, cold, but not quite cold enough for snow. Just cold enough to be unpleasant. Wonderful. Anyway, that sums up our news and weather. Currently, it's 47 degrees here at KCFV. I'm Jell, and this has been your noon news update. But please stay tuned, because after a short break, we will be back with GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which has been airing every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. However, this is the last show of the year, so please stay tuned for that. We will certainly be making plans to return next year, but the time slot is unknown. But I will keep y'all posted on that. But please stay tuned for the last GameBabble of the year. Until then, here is Circus Sideshow by Hollow Point Heroes, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was Circus Sideshow by Hollow Point Heroes here on 89.5 FM KCFV, The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which has been airing every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. However, this is the last show of the year. We'll be back next year. Not sure what time, definitely a different time. I hear a bunch of people want this time slot. So, you know what? Tune in from noon to 3 p.m. Next year, find out what happens. But either way, I will keep y'all posted on the GameBabble YouTube channel. You know, just search up GameBabble, all one word, and fingers crossed you'll find it. It's the one that doesn't involve 2 guys named Phil and Rick. I don't know what's up with them. But we've got the GameBabble channel, and then we have the GameBabble Live Archive, which is where you can find all of our old episodes. Which, interestingly enough, this will be our 39th episode of the year, meaning that we have the exact same number of episodes this year and last year. Because I made playlists for 2017 and 2018. Both of them are coming up 39. I got 38 in there right now, and that's really unusual because, well, I missed like a day or two both years, so I missed the exact same number of days. You know, sometimes you just get sick or family issues come up. Things happen. Either way, though, so, 39th episode of the year. Hope you've enjoyed. Anyway, getting back on topic, we like to kick the show off with the new game releases. What's coming out this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters. So, let's go! Last time this year, what do we got? This week on PS4, we've got Desert Child, Double Switch, 25th Anniversary Edition. Double Switch being it's like Night Trap, but better. It's an old Sega CD game. I have a friend who's like a big fan of it. Earth Defense Force 5, which, yes, I was up early this morning downloading this one. I'll give you a short report on it. I'm only like 5 or 6 missions in, so don't have too much experience, but I am pleased despite the price tag. Moving on, Gungrave VR and Gungrave VR UN. Now, I did import Gungrave VR. I grabbed it off the Japanese store. Not very good. However, they have since updated it drastically. I know they're doing a boxed release, which I believe comes with Gungrave VR UN, which I just found out was a side-scroller. So I guess I'm picking it up again. Fingers crossed it's back. I like Gungrave enough that I will give it another go. So I'm very curious about Gungrave VR and Gungrave VR UN. Moving on, though, Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. I have no clue what this is and can't find any information on it. Kingdom, Two Crowns, Red Matter, SON, Smash Hit Plunder, The Video Kid, Warbot. And then tomorrow, Final Fantasy 15 Comrades, the standalone version of the multiplayer mode, which will also come with some enhancements, is coming out. If you already bought it as DLC for Final Fantasy 15, good news, we are supposed to get free copies. I did say we because I picked up a cheap used copy of Final Fantasy 15 just to play the Comrades mode because I was so curious about it. Anyway, moving on, Richie's Plank Experience. And following that, we have Atari Flashback Collection, Atari Flashback Classics Volume 3. Double Switch 25th Anniversary Edition again. Ni no Kuni 2, Revenant Kingdom, The Lair of the Lost Lord, which I assume is some DLC. SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy is getting Jeanne d'Arc as DLC. The World Heroes version, which is very, very, very different from the historical figure, to say the least. World Heroes is silly. Moving on, BB and Tina, Adventures with Horses, BB Blocks, 2 games starring BB coming out starring people named BB coming out the same day. Who would have guessed? Anyway, BB Bloxburg, Big Broom Race 3, Big Crown Showdown, Borderlands 2 VR, Escape Game Aloha, Kingmaker, Rise to the Throne, and the Override Mech City Brawl character Stardust, which, for the record, we will be discussing Override Mech City Brawl later in the show as well. Meanwhile, Xbox One, what you got for us? You got Path of Exile Betrayal, followed by Kingdom, Two Crowns, Desert Child, Doom and Destiny, and Final Fantasy 15 Comrades. Then, below, Big Crown Showdown, Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms, Kingmaker, Rise to the Throne, Knights of Pen and Paper 2, Deluxiest Edition, Lazy Galaxy, Rebel Story, Override Mech City Brawl getting Stardust, Plague Road, and Rally Racers. Meanwhile, this week the Switch is getting Guacamelee 2, Desert Child, Everspace, Stellar Edition, Kingdom, Two Crowns, Salt and Sanctuary, Drowned Tome Edition, Solar Flux, All Might Tree, The Last Dreamer, Battle Princess Madeline, Big Bash Boom, Blue Rider, Gris, Hunter's Legacy Perfect Edition, Knights of Pen and Paper 2, Deluxiest Edition, Omen Sight Definitive Edition, again with the editions, Oxyjet, Roller Coaster Tycoon Adventures, Sega Ages Phantasy Star, SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy is getting Jeanne d'Arc on Switch as well, Starman, Big Crown Showdown, Lazy Galaxy Rebel Story, Peace Death Complete Edition, and Race Arcade. The 3DS is getting nothing, and the Vita is getting Dragonfly Chronicles, Night Trap 25th Anniversary Edition, and Atari Flashback Classics. So, that's it for this week. What is coming out next week? Next week is the PS4 is getting Warhammer Vermintide 2 and Rain World. Is that it? Yes, that is it. Although, on the 25th, it's also getting the Kingdom Hearts VR experience, which looks like watching music videos while beating up Heartless in first person in VR. Okay. Xbox One next week is getting Donut Country and Sundered Eldritch Edition. Next week for the Switch, Donut Country, and then Bring Them Home, Fungi Puzzle, Fungi Explosion, Guess the Character, Horizon Shift 81, Kingmaker, Rise to the Throne, Leopoldo Manquiselli, Nightshade, The Keep, Viviette, Worldwide Adventure Collection, Clouds and Sheep 2, Dynamite Fishing, World Games, Sundered Eldritch Edition, and Windjammers. Really, did it get pushed back? Okay. 3DS has nothing coming out next week, and the Vita has London Detective Mysteria coming out next week. So that sums up new game releases for this week and what's coming out next week. Yeah, there's kind of a big gap for next week, and like around Christmas, pretty much nothing is happening. And then, once we get to January, things pick back up again. But moving on, as for anime in theaters, we don't really have a whole lot. Not really an anime, but there is Never-Ending Man Hayao Miyazaki, a documentary on Hayao Miyazaki, big head guy, Studio Ghibli. That will be in theaters December 13th and 18th. And sometime this month is supposed to be Haikara-san, Here Comes Miss Modern 2. No clue when. And then January, we've got Dragon Ball Super Broly at some time. I'd love some specific dates, but we don't have them. So that sums up our new game releases for this week and next week, and what anime are in theaters. So yeah, that's those are certainly some releases. Let me tell you though, today's episode is going to be interesting because of all things, like at the last minute, right now, just before Christmas, a gigantic pile of utterly random games just flopped onto the market this past week, and I've picked up a bunch of them, so I have a bunch to report on. There has actually been too much going on, especially waking up this morning and being like, oh shoot, Earth Defense Force 5 is here. That's happening, despite the fact that I really don't like the way Earth Defense Force 5 was released. It's full price digital only. And no sign of the Starship Troopers DLC. I'd love to know what's going on with that. I am assuming that they have run into copyright issues or have not attempted to sort out copyright issues or what the deal is. I don't know. I'd like to know because everyone wants the Starship Troopers DLC. But moving on. Yeah, so we will definitely be discussing Earth Defense Force 5 later in the show. Brief discussion of the Video Game Awards and some of the reveals there. What? No, let's do that now. Because I'd like to extend this segment just a little bit longer before taking a break and then slamming face first into all sorts of wackiness. So let's see. For the Video Game Awards, that was this past week. Jeff Keighley kind of bought those awards and has been trying to run them. And let me tell you, there were a million streams of people watching the VGAs. No one actually watches the VGAs. Everyone watches other people watch the VGAs. And let me tell you, it was also the dumbest thing. Because this is supposed to be sort of like the Oscars for video games. It's supposed to be this big award show. And yet, there's a huge chunk of awards that were completely just bleh. Like nothing. There was no pomp, no presentation. Namely for stuff, like they did... Okay, there was like a point where they did like 5 commercials in a row, and then it's, and all this standing around talking and saying, oh, by the way, now it's time to announce these, these 3 awards. And then they just announced them and moved on. Like, I know one of them was Best VR Game of the Year, which goes to Astrobot. Good job there. Not going to argue with that one. But I think it's kind of funny that they were like, oh, that happened. That, they just are like, okay, Astrobot wins Best VR Game of the Year. Moving on. It's like, wait, wasn't this supposed to be an award show? Shouldn't there be, at least a video for that? showing the game, showing what won. No one really knows what Astrobot looks like. You didn't even show like a clip of the trailer or anything. The VGAs were definitely more about the announcements than they were about the actual awards. Which, let me tell you, those VGA announcements were very interesting. They revealed a bunch of games. The main one that intrigued me is that Crash Team Racing's remake is 100% confirmed. They did reveal that. And, of course, the big surprise of the show that shattered everyone's mind, Joker from Persona 5 is gonna be in Smash. That one caught me off guard because I had to leave to go pick up my copy of Smash at the midnight launch before they revealed Joker. So I'm standing in line and everyone's talking about the Joker reveal. And someone shows me the video in line and I'm like, wait, so that's real? Because I didn't believe them. Because it makes no sense. I finally found the loophole that they're using, but it was confusing because Persona is a series that has always been on Sony systems. There are pretty much no Persona games on Nintendo systems, and they did not reveal a Persona 5 port for Switch, though we're all kind of expecting it. The Switch could absolutely handle it because it's a PS3 game. The Persona 5 was made on the PS3. It runs identical on PS3 to how it does on PS4. They just ported it to PS4 because the PS3 was pretty much done and over with in most of the world by that point in time. So it was like, okay, we'll just slap it on PS4 because it doesn't have backwards compatibility or anything, which was a very good call. Persona 5 did very well. But yeah, having the main character of Persona 5 be revealed for Super Smash Bros. Is the kind of thing that makes you go, wait, what, how, huh? It's it is actually the most unexpected reveal. It is true. We never saw it coming. No one leaked this. No one guessed this. No one could have even comprehended this. And I was like, why? Like, I like Persona 5 a lot, but why? Finally got my answer. Finally found the loophole. Persona Q and Persona Q2, which are quiz games on the 3DS. So those are Persona games on a Nintendo system, technically. And Persona Q2 does feature Joker from Persona 5. And what do you know? Persona Q2 is the best 3DS debut of 2018 in Japan. A lot of qualifiers there. But what that means is Persona Q2 just came out, and it sold super well and super fast in Japan. No announcements for a US release for that one. We're not sure what's going on with that. But yeah, Persona Q2 did insanely well. Persona Q1 did even better. And so I'm just guessing Persona 5 was insanely successful in Japan. And so there's my big unexpected Japanese pull then. I mean, Persona 5 was successful in America, but like, I guess this is a thing now. Yeah, caught me off guard would be an understatement. Anyway, guess what? It is about time for that much talked about break. Let me get this all lined up properly. Yeah. So we are going to take a short break, and when we get back, we will continue with our video game news. Oh, one more thing I did want to mention. There was one award at the VGAs that made me both incredibly happy and incredibly sad, and that was seeing Sonic Fox get an award for Best Esports Gamer of the Year. I'm always rooting for Sonic Fox. He is utterly phenomenal at the games he plays. He's a fighting gamer, and it's great to see someone from the FGC get up there instead of like a Fortnite player or a CSGO player or something else. It's nice to see someone from the fighting game community. I like how out there Sonic Fox is willing to be. And again, he's really good. People are, of course, debating about his whole seat switch at the Dragon Ball FighterZ tournament at EVO. But I remember a few years ago, like, the stuff he pulled, how much he put people on blast in Mortal Kombat and Injustice and the like. He's pretty much the best at everything that isn't Street Fighter. I don't know if he does Guilty Gear, but I know Dragon Ball FighterZ, Mortal Kombat, and Injustice are 3 games that he is insanely good at, and I do respect his skills. Maybe he shouldn't have said the last thing at the end of his speech. But if there's anything the fighting game community is known for, it's popping off, not giving a crap, and desperately trying to intentionally piss people off. Trust me, he could have said far worse things. I remember what happened with, what was that game? What was that thing called? Cross Assault? With Eris? Yeah! That went over well, you friggin' idiot. So, not a fan of that last little jab Sonic Fox took at the end there. But you know what? It is what it is. I can get over it. And he's just going to sit there on Twitter trying intentionally to piss people off because that is what the fighting game community does. They intentionally try to piss people off, and they've succeeded. I actually quite hate them, but I love fighting games, so we're all in this together. Anyway, time for a break. Here is The Story by Fivefold, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more of the final episode of GameBabble Live for the year. That was Oh Yeah by Alan Gates here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show which airs every Tuesday. Well, has been airing every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Excuse me, this is our last show of the year, but don't worry, we will return next year at a different time. We'll keep you posted on the GameBabble YouTube channels. There's one for the GameBabble show and where I post all my streams, that's just GameBabble. And then there's the GameBabble Live archive where you can find archived episodes of this very show. I'll upload them as soon as I can, although, admittedly, I didn't get last week's up until last night. You had some complications with that. Anyway, though, just look up GameBabble Live archive, fingers crossed you'll find the right channel. You might run into 2 guys named Phil and Rick, I don't know what their deal is, but, go look that up. I'm very intrigued by the fact that this is our 39th episode of the year, meaning we have the same number of episodes this year as we did last year. Either way, welcome back to the show. So, let's talk about one of the more interesting stories of recent times. Good old Street Fighter V. Good old Street Fighter V. Every time I think about buying you, you do something to make me go, maybe not. Street Fighter V has been just a series of Capcom dropping the ball. They revealed the game and it's like, oh, this is only going to be on PS4 and PC, no Xbox release. Okay, that's a little bit BS, but whatever. And then it comes out and it's like flagrantly unfinished. Like the launch version of Street Fighter V had no content. And it was incredibly poorly handled. And just ever since then, they censored certain outfits and cut out certain scenes. And every time I think, oh, well, maybe I'll give it a chance, they do something else new. Like they censor yet another outfit. Or they do some other absurd thing. And the latest thing that Street Fighter V has done to make me go, to make other people actually go, and only eventually making me go, is in-game advertisements. That's right, Capcom has announced that starting today, and I believe you can actually, download a free version of Street Fighter V and play it for, a week. So they're having, sort of a free preview version you could try out right now to see if you want to play some Street Fighter V. But starting today, Street Fighter V is rolling out in-game advertisements, which will be displayed on billboards in the background of stages, on certain characters' clothing, in certain costumes, as well as during loading screens. They claim that these advertisements will not affect load times, and believe it or not, you can opt out of them. You could go to options, and you can turn them off. But if you accept in-game advertisements, you get extra in-game fight money to buy things with. On paper, I heard a lot of people hear about this, and they were incredibly grumpy. But on paper, I was like, that doesn't sound too bad. And there's a reason I say that. See, this isn't the first time that in-game advertising has been a thing. In-game advertising, like stuff like this, has been going on for decades, and yet every single time in-game advertisements get talked about in gaming news, people act like it's the end of the world, that this is the first time this has happened. Technically, I decided to look it up, and people are saying, oh, well, the earliest known in-game advertisement is in the 1978 computer game Adventureland, which inserted a self-promotional advertisement for its next game, Pirate Adventure. Yeah, you know what? No. Advertising your next game is not what I would call an in-game advertisement. No. You want to talk real in-game advertisements. This is the thing I bring up every time someone starts talking about in-game advertisements. You go back to 1982. Pole position. Not any of the home ports. Don't look at the home ports. You gotta look at the actual arcade machines of Pole Position, and you will find they have billboards for actual products. Products that I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say on the radio, since this is free and we're not supposed to be giving them advertisements, but certain soft drinks, certain drink mixes, a certain convenience store chain, and most shockingly of all, Pole Position actually had advertisements for a certain brand of cigarettes. And this is one of the things that really intrigues me, because I looked it up, because according to some people, the actual cigarette company did not pay for those advertisements and actually sued Atari, forcing them to remove them. Likely, sounds utterly insane, and it's like, well, that's likely because they knew that if people noticed that there were cigarette advertisements in a video game back in 1982, that they would bring the hammer down on said cigarette company. But I still need to look into this more. Like, looking into the history of in-game advertisements is actually something that slightly intrigues me. But yes, like, go back to Pole Position. They had ads for things in Pole Position. Like, for tires, drink mixes, cigarettes, they were there. So this isn't anything new. And even the idea of using online advertisements is nothing new. As a thing I stumbled across from 2008 shows, Barack Obama was actually running ads in Madden. Let's see. They said that the only gamers playing online in 10 states can see the ads. So it was state dependent, and they appeared as billboards in a couple of different games. All states are swing states, so let's see. That was Colorado, Florida, Iowa, Indiana, Montana, North Carolina, New Mexico, Nevada, Ohio, and Wisconsin were the states where, if you lived there, you would see Barack Obama ads in your games. And the games were Madden NFL 09, Burnout Paradise, NASCAR 09, NHL 09, NBA Live 08, Need for Speed Carbon, Need for Speed Pro Street, NFL Tour, and Skate. And yeah, so Obama ran ads in Burnout and Madden. That happened, but only in 10 states. So what Capcom is doing is nothing new, which is why this isn't making me go all up in arms, because I remember the last 10 times we were up in arms about this. Speaking personally, putting ads on in-game billboards really, really, really doesn't bother me, as long as it doesn't impact gameplay or performance. At least, that's what I thought. But, credit where credit's due to Jim Sterling, he did bring up a few good points. Though the video game industry has actually been kind of good about this, because this has been going on since 1982, they always want to take more. They always want another slice of the pie. They're always taking, and so there is a concern that one of these days they will intentionally slow down loading screens in order to show advertisements. That they will do something like, oh, you have to watch this ad before you can click continue. There is that worry that eventually they're going to start pulling BS like that. it's surprising that that hasn't happened quite yet, at least not outside of free-to-play games. And the reason for that is because brands actually recognize there's a negative association with those things. That if people see an ad for your brand while they're playing a video game, on a billboard, that's normal, that's fine, that's what they're used to in the real world, it's believable, it doesn't break immersion, right? But when the ads become intrusive and annoy you, then it creates a negative association with their product. So that's one of the things that's kind of been keeping that in line and why we haven't seen too much of that. And it is worth mentioning that Street Fighter V, the game that these advertisements will be appearing in, is a full-price game. There is no free-to-play version of Street Fighter V, though if you ask me, there should have been. There's no free-to-play Street Fighter V. You gotta go to the store, you gotta buy that, or you have to download it off of the PSN store or off of Steam and stuff. So you can't just get the game for free because you're watching advertisements. And as many people have pointed out, Capcom is very stingy with the fight money you earn in that game. So these in-game advertisements, it can feel a little scammy there. And that's another thing that companies could easily do. Oh, hey, you can turn off the in-game advertisements, but then the amount of gold you get is terrible, and games become more grindy. That is certainly another route they could take. And one of the other things that Jim Sterling brought up that I do have to give him a point on, he mentioned that that network television is very, very sterile because they don't want to piss off advertisers. And that's something a lot of people have experienced. On YouTube, we all remember the adpocalypse. There's been a lot of crackdown on content because advertisers don't want a negative association with their brand. And this has already affected Capcom because, of course, they wanted to show Street Fighter V tournaments on ESPN, and that was a large part of what led them to censoring certain outfits. And it's like, and that was one of my big beefs with Street Fighter V, was the sheer amount of just utterly random, out-of-nowhere censorship that would happen in the game, in, like, the stupidest areas. Like, it's really dumb. So, now that, it's like, well, now that you mention it, maybe this is a terrible idea. Again, I have absolutely no beef with people putting advertisements on in-game billboards. That's kind of what they're there for. But it's very easy to overstep your boundaries on that one. And that's the part that worries me and disgusts me, and so on. So that is certainly an interesting topic. That's certainly an interesting topic. Oh, by the way, when I was talking about the VGAs, changing topics now. When we were talking about the video game awards, the VGAs, they also revealed Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which will be a Switch exclusive. I can't find enough information about this. A lot of people have looked at it and said, the graphics don't look that great. It looks kind of like a mobile game. I'm not so sure on it. I think it looks fine. But I heard some rumors that Team Ninja might be making it, but I can't find any confirmation of that. And that's driving me completely up the wall, because I would like to know. Speaking of Team Ninja, Elliot and Brad Wong are confirmed for Dead or Alive 6. Good. They're two of the best male characters in the game. I love Brad Wong. Unfortunately, I just found out that Brad Wong's Japanese voice actor passed away recently, but he was able to complete voice acting for this game before passing. May he rest in peace. Moving on. That's a fun one. Let's see, moving on. I mentioned that Ni no Kuni is getting some new DLC. Well, if you are a fan of Ni no Kuni, you might want to perk your ears up on this one. The DS version has just been fan-translated. Now, of course, that means that there's no proper way to get your hands on it, but this is a point of serious interest. See, Ni no Kuni was originally a DS game, which did not get released in America, and then it got a quote-unquote enhanced PS3 version. What's intriguing about this, though, is that a lot of people went back and said, you know what, the DS version was better. A lot of people prefer the DS version of Ni no Kuni, which had a different battle system and relied on a massive book that came with it. The book has also been translated. It's a 357-page book. It's been translated as a PDF file. And yeah, there's a fan translation out now. And I think that's a wonderful thing, because, I hear, the DS version is so much better, but I'm like, yeah, and it's an RPG that requires a lot of reading that I can't do because I don't know Japanese, and no, I'm not learning Japanese just to play Ni no Kuni. Cripes. Like, I hate it when people just go, just learn the language. Japanese is a kind of hard language to learn. It's a little complex. You can't just go, I know Japanese now. We don't live in the Matrix, I don't think, anyway. Moving on. Let's see. Katy Perry is coming to Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, so that's the next random pop star to be showing up in that mobile game. And, so they've shown a poster for the Sonic the Hedgehog live-action movie. It's horrifying. Like, we can't even get a full view of the character, but I don't think there's a single person on the planet that doesn't look at it and go, okay, yeah, no, that's bad. What the heck? Because, yeah, they're trying to make Sonic look like Sonic, but also be realistic, and the result is very, skinny werehog. It's a skinny werehog. And people are looking at it, and they're going, what? No? And, yeah. So, that one's not being received too well. People are looking at that and going, oh no. No. But that's where we're at with that one. And, speaking of Sega, this is one of the most intriguing things. They've just announced that Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2 are getting remakes by a Polish developer named Forever Entertainment. Okay? Who are you guys? I've looked them up. They've done a bunch of games, but none of them would give me any idea if they would be good at making Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2 or not. They're like the most utterly random smattering of games. And it does worry me. Those are really good games, and they could really easily screw up the remake, especially because they do mention like some desire to modernize them, and that has me worried. In case you don't know, I love me some chase view rail shooters. I love on-rail shooters. I think they're a sorely underrated and underappreciated genre. Unfortunately, people associate on-rails with being bad. And as such, I do worry that these updated Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2s will screw up the gameplay somehow. Try to add in some free flying segments, which don't generally turn out too well. But at the same time, untested developer could wind up being like completely amazing and do a great job. Either way, they say Panzer Dragoon 1 will be out by the end of 2019, so it's a ways off. We'll see how they handle it. I really, really sincerely hope they do the games justice. And I'm glad that they're doing 1 and 2, because if they screw up 1, it's not that big a deal. It's easy to get your hands on a copy of Panzer Dragoon 1. Panzer Dragoon 2 is only available on the Sega Saturn. There are no other ports of it, and it is a phenomenal game, and I would be really pissed off if the remake wound up being terrible, and that wound up being everyone's first impression of an otherwise legendarily awesome game. So, that's a thing. Fingers crossed that turns out alright. Anyway, I do believe it is time for, us to take another break. So here is I Be Everywhere by LG DePrice here on 89.5 FM KCF Feed the Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind, and thank you so much for listening. Please stay tuned for more of GameBabble Live. That was Expectations by Magic here on 89.5 FM KCF Feed the Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which has been airing every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m., but this final show of the year, baby. So, yeah, making it quite a packed show, or as packed as I can make it. I'm happy to have you joining us. Don't worry, we will be back next year. Not sure on the time, but stay tuned to the GameBabble YouTube channels, and you will find out. So, quick update. It appears Battle Princess Madeline on Switch and PS4 has been delayed to December 20th, so slight delay there. I know that was That was a thing earlier. Also, apparently, Corey Marshall, voice of Ryo Hazuki from Shenmue, is recording voice acting for Shenmue 3. It is, in fact, happening, people. So, let's see, where were we? Ah, yes. So, we ready to put the final nail in the PlayStation Classic? I hope we are, because one last thing was discovered about the console. For those of you unfamiliar, because this is a fun story, Sony announced a little while ago that, hey, you know how Nintendo has their NES Classic, their Super NES Classic? We're going to do a PlayStation Classic. A little miniature PlayStation, and you buy it, and it's going to have a bunch of games on it. And people are like, oh, it looks so cool. But at least one person, credit to Maximilian, dude, he looked at it and he said, something don't look right here. He was like, this does not look as good as it should. He was looking at that Tekken 3, he's like, something's off. And boy, howdy, was he right. Because as the console neared release, people looked at, they revealed what games were on it, and people were like, what the heck, this is a crappy list of games. You got a few good ones on here, but for the price tag, these 20 games, not that great of picks. And what the heck, no analog sticks on your controller? People got a little bit of cold feet. They weren't so sure. But as the console neared release, something horrible was found out about it. Number one, it's actually running an open source emulator, PCSXR. It's just running PCSXR rearmed. It's just running an open source emulator that you can download off the internet yourself. And worse yet, and it's like one from 2003, I think? So it's an old emulator too, not even like an in-house Sony one, which is really weird. And worse yet, they were using PAL versions for certain games. PAL, of course, being the video standard for Europe, which, in order to convert a lot of games to PAL, they had to be slowed down because that's a 50 hertz refresh rate instead of 60 hertz. And this is something even the people in Europe don't want. It's been a thorn in their side. Tekken 3 notoriously felt like it was being played underwater in the European release. And they hated that, and I can't blame them. At half the games, technically 9 of the 20 games, so slightly, barely less than half the games on the PlayStation Classic are European versions, and they run like crap. But what's amazing is that because they're using this open source emulator, even the games that aren't European are running like crap. Sorry about that. Like Ridge Racer R4 just has frame rate hiccups and stutters. And games like Battle Arena Toshinden, which are European, are running at like 20 frames per second, and it's inconsistent, and they have stuttering, and it's really, really bad. So people are looking at this, they're like, what the heck? And honestly, reading some of the comments on it made me realize the sheer amount of layers of dumb here, because Sony has had PS1 compatibility on pretty much everything except the PS4. PS2 can play PS1 games, PS3 can play PS1 games, even the PS3s that can't play PS2 games, even those ones, any PS3 can run PS1 games. Not all of them run well. Tekken 3 is going to have this weird interlacing problem. Like anything that ran at high res has an interlacing problem. But still, that was a thing. And both the PSP and the Vita and the PlayStation TV, which was just a Vita you hook up to your TV, it's called the Vita TV in Japan, also played PS1 games. Although the Vita and the PlayStation TV were slightly dumb because they didn't actually run PS1 games. They emulated the PSP, which in turn emulated the PS1 games. So the load times were slightly longer on Vita and PlayStation TV than they were on the PSP or the PS3. But even still, they've had this backwards compatibility going for a while. They've had the downloadable PS1 games for a while. They're still up on the Sony store for everything except the PlayStation 4. So, and some people were actually saying that, what the heck, I thought that the PlayStation Classic would just be a repackaged PlayStation TV, which now seems like a much better deal. In fact, that was something that didn't even occur to me, because the PlayStation TV, I'm not allowed to say prices, but the PlayStation TV was the same price as the PlayStation Classic. And to say that you got a way better deal with the PlayStation TV, even though that thing is my arch nemesis, would be an understatement. It's actually kind of mind-blowing. It would have been amazing if they just repackaged a PlayStation TV. It would have provided better emulation, and with that thing, you could download new PS1 games. They could have just done a PlayStation TV preloaded with a couple PS1 games. They could have done that, and people would have praised it stupidly, not even realizing they just bought a Vita hooked up to their TVs. But that would have been way better than a PlayStation Classic, which is just running like an Android and a PS1 emulator poorly. Anyway, here's the joke. Here's the twist. Here's the thing that is kind of funny. So, people took some USB keyboards and plugged them into their PlayStation Classics, hit the escape key, and were able to bring up the emulator menu that had been disabled and has a bunch of features that you can't access in the PlayStation Classic. The PlayStation Classic has a bunch of features which might make some games run better or more favorably, including like access to more save slots that aren't normally there. It's a very weird situation, but as if that wasn't enough, people have hacked into it. Here's our final thing. People have hacked into the PlayStation Classic. They found a text file of a list of titles and preset configurations for games that are and aren't in the system. And people have looked at this list of games and gone, what the heck, why didn't we get these? And indeed, some of these are very, very intriguing. Let's read them all off. Armored Core Master of the Arena, Chocobo's Mysterious Dungeon, Colin McRae Rally, Crash Bandicoot 2, Toy Story 2, Devil Dice, Driver, Air Guys, Fighting Force, Gran Turismo, Grand Theft Auto 2, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Kagero Deception 2, Klonoa, Door to Phantomile, Kula World, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, Medal of Honor, Medieval, Mega Man Legends, Mr. Driller G, Paka Paka Passion. That's a Japanese rhythm game, by the way. Probably only would have been in the Japanese one. Parappa the Rapper, Parasite Eve, which is in the Japanese one, but this indicates that they were looking at putting in the US one. Race Storm, Ridge Racer 1, Silent Hill, Spec Ops, Stealth Patrol, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha. I thought Alpha 3 was already on the PlayStation Classic. Anyway, Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha, Suikoden, Tomb Raider 2, Tomba, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Vagrant Story, Wild Arms 2, and Xevious 3D/G+. Wow, that's a lot of way better games that really should have been in this collection, but weren't. Like, I could list off a ton of these that really should have been in here. Like, Air Guys would have been an interesting one. I know that was kind of one that only I'd care about. But, like, Mega Man Legends would have been a good pick. Klonoa would have been an incredible pick. Ray Storm would have been a nice pick. Suikoden would have been an incredible pick. Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha. Honestly, they should have gone with EX2, but even EX Plus Alpha would have been a really good pick. Vagrant Story, I know a lot of people wanted that. Wild Arms 2, that's another good one. Silent Hill and Tomba should have been in there. Like, above all the others, Silent Hill and Tomba. Because Silent Hill is like a classic series. A lot of people love it. And being able to play Silent Hill 1 would have been a massive draw. And Tomba's a hard-to-find game that many people have incredibly fond memories of. So putting Tomba in there would have been another good call. But no, something happened. These games did not make the cut. And so, stick a fork in it, it's done. That is the PS1 Classic. Although there are currently videos, I did not watch them yet, but some people are asking, is it even worth it to hack the PS1 Classic? Which it probably isn't. You could probably get better. So long, PS1 Classic. We knew you well. We knew you were crap. No sign of the N64 Classic, but it has won by default. It has won by default. Moving on, though. Where do we go from here? Well, folks, let me tell you, I picked up a ton of games recently. And I'm going to try to get through a couple of the smaller ones before we take the break, before we get into the Smash discussion. First of all, Toki. Oh, egad, I'm so glad that I reserved that one, because they only got one Retro Lecture edition in, and yeah, apparently a bunch of people wanted it, which I can't blame them. It was a really good collector's edition. Did get my hands on it, popped it open. Came with a comic book and stickers and lithographs that actually looked like they were really signed. And, of course, the wooden arcade cabinet, which I have to report, Not quite as impressive as I hoped. It does not quite look like the picture. They don't show the little tabs where the wooden pieces come together. And the wood is kind of, like, slightly better than a popsicle stick. It's not balsa wood, but it's not, like, the most incredible wood. But it is a wooden arcade cabinet to put your Switch into and play Toki on. And it's adorable, and I love it. Toki itself is an old Japanese arcade game that no one cared about. It had an NES and a Sega Genesis release. I guess it was popular in Europe on the Amiga, but it's a game where a dude gets turned into a monkey that spits bullets and tries to rescue his girlfriend, of course. And for some reason, a couple years back, the artist behind Mr. Nuts and the composer behind Shaq Fu decided that they wanted to remake this game in HD. And they started work on it, and it was supposed to be a WiiWare game, and they ran out of funding. And now, all of a sudden, it's back on Nintendo Switch, and I'm going to say it is very much a downloadable game at its core. And I forgot to look up what its actual downloadable price was. Let me see if I can find that, even though I can't say it on here. Well, let's see. Toki. I didn't want to review. Just show me Toki on the Nintendo website. There we go. Let's see. How much cheaper would it have been to... not that much cheaper to buy it digitally. That's a little bit pricey for what it is. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Toki is just a remake and that's it. There's, like, no extra content. Nothing. Like, you've got difficulty levels, which choose the number of lives that you get in a stage. And that's it. It is just, here's the arcade game redone in HD. But it's redone really well in HD. Like, those are really high-resolution sprites that animate like they're freaking Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. You know, this game looks like Skullgirls good, and it's Toki. Of all things, it's Toki. Which is one game I will absolutely say deserves the title of the Dark Souls of something. I get sick of people going, oh, this is the Dark Souls of whatever. But Toki, no, it actually has something in common with Dark Souls. And that's the fact that you really need to progress slowly because there's a bunch of seemingly cheap death traps in there. And in Toki, I'm actually going to call them cheap. I've been killed so many times by just zombie monkeys popping out of the ground under me. But there's like a ton of times where you'll just be like, oh, all I need to do is jump over this ledge to get to the next area. And the screen scrolls down slightly and, oh, there was an enemy that instantly darts across the screen and kills you. Because this is one of those games where one hit and you're dead, okay? And then it's like, oh, all I need to do is drop down here. Oh, whoops, enemy kills me. All I need to do is climb up here. Oh, whoops, enemy kills me. You need to proceed with caution, as though it were Dark Souls. So it's a very peculiar game. I don't know why it exists, but in a weird way, I'm glad I have it because it's fascinating that it exists. But I can't beat the first stage. This game is stupid hard. But yeah, no. So Toki happened. Had a good bit of fun with that. Next up, Override Mech City Brawl. Finally picked that up. Spent a little time with it last night. Did get a physical release. And I love the way they're handling the physical release because supposedly it comes with the season pass. I can't quite tell yet, but physical release is supposed to come with the season pass, which justifies the fact that it's slightly more pricey than just buying it digitally. And it's a pretty fun game. Override Mech City Brawl is kind of like War of the Monsters and Godzilla, not quite like Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee. It is actually a Western developed game, but it looks very nice, very good mech designs. And basically, you and up to 3 other players are in a city fighting with giant robots, and you can even play it where 4 people all control the same giant robot, Voltron style, and you could even take that online. It would be clunky and stupid, but if you want to do that, you could do that. I will say the movement is smooth but floaty. And the controls are interesting because the way it's set up is L1 and R1 are left punch and right punch, and L2 and R2 are left kick and right kick. And then holding square and hitting any of those attack buttons will do your 4 special attacks. all those buttons can be charged and released, and you can hit left and right on the D-pad to pick up weapons in either your left or right hand and begin wielding them. It absolutely has combos. There is some meat to the gameplay, but it does feel floaty and awkward as well. It is a very interesting game. I can't decide if I like it or not. I'm a little on the fence on it, but if nothing else, the sheer amount of destruction is very impressive. It is a very good-looking game, well put together. Seems pretty nice. Barely cracked into The Last Remnant Remastered. Unfortunately, digital only, but the price tag kind of justifies it. And The Last Remnant is one of these really it's a game I've always wanted to play, and I look forward to finally getting a chance to play it now that I have an HD TV. This is actually the reason why I wear glasses, is because of The Last Remnant. Allow me to explain. Last console generation, there was a serious lack of JRPGs. And the Western gaming market was expanding greatly. Everything was becoming much more Western-focused, and Square Enix didn't quite know what to do. And so they decided to make a game called The Last Remnant. And the idea was, its tagline was that it was the Square Enix RPG for the world. It was going to be released in America, Japan, and Europe on PS3 and 360 all simultaneously, and it was built on Unreal Engine, which at the time was kind of unheard of for a Japanese-developed game, right? Like, now all the Japanese developers are moving to Unreal, but back then, they were very iffy about it. Well, the whole endeavor kind of fell apart. The game came out on time on 360. I think the Japanese release got delayed slightly. US release was on time. PS3 release was completely canceled. The game was a bit clunky, had some issues, got a superior PC port, but this was back when PC gaming was kind of in the gutter. Not a lot of people picked it up on PC, and it got kind of a bad reputation because of the 360 version. And then the game just vanished from everyone's consciousness. No one really talked about it. I had one friend, which I really wish I had a way to contact him, who loved the PC version and told me, you gotta give it a chance because this game's really good. But I never really got a chance to. Skip ahead, like, practically almost a decade, I think? And all of a sudden we hear news, oh, this is being delisted from Steam. And it's like, what? And so everyone panics and they buy the game, only to find out the following day that The Last Remnant Remastered was coming out, only on PS4 for some reason. And yeah, it's literally just them going, okay, well, we're going to take this game from Unreal Engine 3 and we're going to plop it into Unreal Engine 4. The price tag certainly reflects that, but it is very nice. Now, why is this the game that caused me to wear glasses? Easy. That was the time period when we were transitioning from standard definition TVs to high definition TVs. And a lot of 360 games had really, really tiny text that you couldn't read. And I strained my eye. The smallest text on 360 was probably The Last Remnant. Like that and Way of the Samurai 3. And I strained my eyes until my eyesight got really bad trying to play, well, not really bad, but until I'd certainly damaged it, trying to play games like The Last Remnant because they did not accommodate standard definition TVs. Most JRPGs of that generation did not. I think Enchanted Arms was, I don't remember any problems with Enchanted Arms. I need to double check that one. But Tales of Vesperia and Magna Carta 2 were like the only other RPGs I can think of that were fine on standard definition TVs. Everything else had just this microscopic freaking text on 360. And it was really, really annoying. And that text seems nice and big if you're on an HD TV. But if you're on a standard definition TV, it's micro-friggin-scopic. And The Last Remnant is a very confusing game that requires a whole lot of reading, and yeah, it didn't go over well. I do mean confusing because, like, you don't really get into normal battles. It's supposed to be like army versus army, and it's weird. Like, it's really weird. I love the way the game starts with this utterly confusing cutscene that doesn't seem to go anywhere, and then it just throws you into a battle with no explanation of how anything works, and there's just words and numbers and options popping up on screen, and you have no clue what's going on, but it's really cool and flashy. That was how The Last Remnant went. I've barely cracked into it, but it's nice to see it there. It does look pretty good. Still has some frame rate hiccups, though. But nice to see it back. Nice to see it on PS4. slightly touched up. Let's see, moving on. Oh, geez, no, I need to take a break. So we're going to take a break, and then we will get back, talk about Persona 3, 4, and 5 dancing games, Earth Defense Force 5, and then Super Smash Bros. So please stay tuned for that. Until then, though, let me get this all set up. Until then, though, here is I Hate It by Under Oath, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned for more GameBabble Live. Thank you. That was Friends by Marshmello and Anne-Marie, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Or at least it did, but today is the last episode of GameBabble for the year. Don't worry, we will be back next year. Don't know what time, but stay tuned to the GameBabble YouTube channels, and we will keep you updated there. So yeah. We're having us quite an episode because, oh egad, Christmas is coming up, and a bunch of companies went, oh wow, we need to release everything this week. And so a bunch of games have come out. First of all, before we continue, just quickly looked up a review of Gungrave VR, and it does not sound like it has improved since I last played it. If you poke around in the GameBabble YouTube channel, I actually did pick up and play a good chunk of the Japanese version of the game, like, nearly a year ago. Man, Gungrave VR is so bad, it's almost... I need to tell certain people not to pick it up. Because the thing was, I played it. I love Gungrave, okay? I love the games. Wasn't a big fan of the anime, but I love the games. Picked up Gungrave VR because I couldn't wait. I remember talking about that when it was announced on, one of the first episodes of GameBabble, actually. I was so excited to play it. It was one of the reasons I bought a PlayStation VR, because I love Gungrave, and it is not good. And I remember when I was streaming it, I stopped the stream because so many people were, going, wow, this game looks bad, Gungrave is terrible, and I'm like, no. And I popped in the original PS2 game, and it is vastly superior. The problem with Gungrave VR is that Gungrave doesn't play like a third-person shooter, and Gungrave VR kinda does. The enemies are massive bullet sponges. It's basically just a first-person shooter, except you aim with your head. The enemies are massive bullet sponges. The stages are almost non-existent. They're incredibly small. The bosses just took forever to beat the third stage boss. I remember that being one of the big things, was just me hammering away at that boss for 10 minutes straight, because it just sat there and took damage. It was dumb. So don't get Gungrave VR. I am surprised that Xseed decided to not only localize it, but give it a physical release. And it doesn't sound like the Gungrave UN edition is that much better. And now I'm very concerned about the next game in the series, Gungrave Gore, which this is supposed to be a prequel to. Again, Gungrave 1 and Overdose are really good, but Gungrave VR not so much. Look up the stream on the GameBabble YouTube channel, and yeah. Actually, let me try something. Let me hit up YouTube and try searching GameBabble, all one word, Gungrave, 2 words. There it is. Should be the first thing. Stream Gungrave VR, Gungrave 2.5. And then later that was 12 months ago. And then there's a second stream of Gungrave Classic. I think I took a break between the two to eat or something. But either way, yeah. 12 months ago I streamed that. It was not good. Not good game. I am torn on that one. Anyway, let's talk about better games. First of all, Persona 3, 4, and 5 dancing. This was unexpected. So, Persona 4 was incredibly successful and wound up getting some interesting spin-offs, including a fighting game and a dancing game. But the dancing game was only on Vita, and as such, I was a little iffy on picking it up. Didn't really care that much for Persona 4 myself. But a lot of people liked the game, and they were like, yo, wow, I can't wait for for them to do one for Persona 5. And then everyone's like, okay, they're going to announce one for Persona 5, but Persona 3 had really good music. We want one for Persona 3. So recently they announced, probably about a year or two ago, they announced that they were doing Persona 3 and Persona 5, Dancing Moon Knight and Dancing Star Knight. And they were developing them simultaneously as two separate games. And then they would be selling them either individually or as a double pack. And I was very surprised because I was like, for me, I mostly cared about the Persona 5 one, but I did like a lot of the music from Persona 3, and I have more memories of Persona 3 than 4, and I was like, nah, you know what, heck with it, I'll go ahead and buy the ludicrously expensive double pack that has both Persona 3 and 5 in it. It's cheaper than buying them individually. I'll probably wind up getting them individually anyway, yada, yada, yada. Only to get it home and realize something amazing about the double pack. There was a little sticker on the front that I did not even notice that says that if you buy the double pack, you get a free download of Persona 4 Dancing All Night for PS4. They released it digitally. It's not on any of the discs. You gotta download it. But you get a free download of Persona 4. So all of a sudden I have Persona 3, 4, and 5 dancing games on my PS4, and I'm like, well, this was unexpected. It's a lot of music game there. Okay. And with that, all of a sudden, I don't feel so bad about how much money I paid for that, even though I was kind of on the fence on 3. Getting 3 and 4? That's a much better deal. I'm not allowed to say prices on this show. I've mentioned that a few times, but yeah, that's a good pack. That's a good pack to get just the double pack. That I don't know why you'd buy them individually at all unless you really, really, really only care about 3 or 5. Because, whew, what a pack. Having said that, it is worth mentioning that Persona 4, Dancing All Night, actually has a very, very nice full-length story-caked campaign mode. Like, it actually has a kind of good plot and is surprisingly interesting. Has a lot of talking, but that's what Persona do. Persona 3 and 5 do not have that. In fact, their entire plot is just that the casts of... Basically, the plot of Persona 3 and 5 dancing games is that after the events of the Persona 4 dancing game, the Velvet Room attendant, I think was her name Elizabeth? I think it was Elizabeth, told her sisters, like Caroline and Justine and Marguerite, about the events of Persona 4 and how amazing the human that she was helping was. And they were like, no, our protagonists are better than your protagonists. We'll show you. We'll make them compete in a dance competition. So depending on if you're playing Persona 3 or Persona 5, you're training up for a dance competition against the other team. And it's all taking place inside of a single dream, and no one's going to remember it when they wake up. So, pretty much no plot. It does have some social link events, so you do get to see some more of your favorite characters interacting a bit, but it is a little sparse in that regard, especially after how kind of good the Persona 4 story mode was. But this focuses mostly on being more dancing game, and in many ways, it's more of the same as Persona 4. It looks a little bit better. It, has very similar gameplay. Some people don't think the note patterns are quite as good. Some people don't think the dancing is quite as good. It's all whatever. But, yeah. It's a Persona dancing game. And there's more of it. I am quite enjoying it. I know some people have had a little bit of trouble adjusting to the interface, but I think it's quite nice. I like the optional notes. They have scratch notes, which on the Vita, you would reach over and, flick the screen in order to hit the scratch notes. Here you can use either the touchpad or the analog sticks, but the scratch notes are not required. They're just thrown in there as sort of bonus challenge notes. yo, hey, can you take a minute? Can you take a split second to flick the stick between these notes? You'll get bonus points. I kind of like that aspect. Otherwise, yeah, it is what it is. I'm just very surprised by that multi-pack. Now, for the one that really has me intrigued, the game that I would. How dare you come out this late in the year? I want to call you I would almost call this my non-Smash game of the year, just on principle, and that's Earth Defense Force 5. What the heck? Why did Earth Defense Force 5 came out today? And it's very annoying because it is digital only, full price, and yeah, and then there's the deluxe edition that comes with all the DLC as it comes out, which I went ahead and went for because it's Earth Defense Force, but I'm very salty that it didn't get a physical release and barely any advertisement, because Earth Defense Force is one of the greatest games of the past 2 generations. Heck with it, I will say that. So, what is Earth Defense Force? Well, you ever see a cheesy sci-fi movie or a kaiju movie, and, the monsters rampaging through the city, aliens are invading, and you have the people in the model tanks that are getting stepped on by Godzilla and fighting desperately back against the aliens? Yeah, that's you. You play the guy that Godzilla steps on. That is the concept behind Earth Defense Force. It started as a budget title. After creating the game Robot Alchemic Drive, Sandlot took the engine and the destructible city they had from Robot Alchemic Drive, and we're like, hey, we'll just put a guy with a gun and some giant ants and robots and things in the city and tell people to have fun. We'll sell it as a budget title on PS2. And it became an overnight well, maybe not an overnight sensation, but it became a huge hit. It was one of the best games of the simple series of budget titles on PS2 in Japan. Got a European release, did not get a US release. So they made a sequel. They added in a second playable character with Pale Wing, which was a girl with a jetpack. They gave her own loadout of weapons, added in more types of enemies, more stages, just basically took the game and hyper expanded it. Earth Defense Force 2 was one of those like hidden gem, you gotta import this thing kind of games. And it ran like garbage. The frame rate would dip into the single freaking digits, but it was an absolute blast. Moving on to the 360 and PS3 generation. The folks at D3 Publishing, who had published these budget games, realized that the cost of building a video game these days was going up. And so they were like, we can't really do budget games the way we used to. So we're going to take our 2 most popular series, Onei Chanbara and Earth Defense Force, and we're going to give them a larger budget and sell them at a higher price. This led to Earth Defense Force 3, known here in America as Earth Defense Force 2017, the very first game in the franchise we would ever get. And even though it was a huge step backwards from Earth Defense Force 4, only having 1 playable character instead of 2, only having 150 guns instead of 200, having significantly less enemies and stages and environments, they cleaned up the US version really good. It runs better and controls better than the Japanese one, and it became a bit of a cult classic. It got absolutely no advertisements. The reviews for it were sort of whatever. Some people really liked it. Some people thought it was all right. But word of mouth and the fact that every single game in this franchise can be played 2-player local split screen caused Earth Defense Force 2017 to become this sort of cult hit that a lot of people really, really loved. Eventually leading to a Western-made Earth Defense Force game called Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon. It is garbage. Don't play it. I've never seen a game completely miss the mark on everything. The sense of scale was bad. There weren't enough enemies. The destruction was terrible. The weapons were all the same. The graphics were hideous. Enemies didn't react to getting shot. They were just bullet sponges. They completely missed everything that made Earth Defense Force good with that game. Screw Insect Armageddon. It is terrible. But then Japan, at the same time, was working on Earth Defense Force 4, which came to America as Earth Defense Force 2025. And it was a direct sequel to Earth Defense Force 2017, took the concepts laid out in Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon, and drastically expanded the game. darn thing, and drastically expanded the game. My cell phone was doing funny things in my pocket. And so they added in 3 new classes, bunch of new weapons, online play, tons of new enemies to fight, and that came out on 360 and PS3, but it was very, very late in the generation. They would eventually take that, port it to PS4, and eventually Steam. Took quite a while for it to come to Steam. With some enhancements, improvements, new weapons, missions, enemies. Call it Earth Defense Force 4.1, Shadow of New Despair, and that was the last Earth Defense Force game before Earth Defense Force 5. And it was very nice. I had a blast with it. I've posted videos of it. But with this, the price has steadily increased. This now brings us to Earth Defense Force 5, and it's. Ooh, I've been so wrapped up in getting through the history of the series, they haven't even really explained more about how Earth Defense Force plays, what makes it good, and 5 in general. And unfortunately, we need to take another break. So please stay tuned after this quick break. No, I think I can stave off the break for just a little bit longer. Okay, so Earth Defense Force, so yes, now Earth Defense Force 5 comes out, but unfortunately, it's digital only, full price, even though this is still a very low-budget production. Like, none of the characters' models animate, all the character models look dated as all heck. The game is full of bugs and hiccups and glitches, and yet it is easily my second favorite game of the year already because it's Earth Defense Force. Because Earth Defense Force is just that fun. These are games that don't care. They come from a completely different mindset from a AAA game. Because they don't care about looking pretty and having the best presentation and the best graphics. What they care about is just pure and simple fun. And fun is the name of the game here. They are incredibly basic third-person shooters with a whole lot of charm, and we'll get back to talking about them, because now, unfortunately, we do need to take that break. So here is New Thing by French Montana and Remy Ma, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV, The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more GameBabble Live, where we will get back to telling you about the awesomeness that is Earth Defense Force 5, before finally talking about Smash. Please stay tuned for that, but until then, enjoy New Thing by French Montana and Remy Ma, here on 89.5 FM. Thank you so much. That was Nonstop by Drake, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. And welcome back to GameBabble Live, the last show of the year. But we will be back next year, so stay tuned to the GameBabble Live YouTube channel. We've got the GameBabble YouTube channel, and then we have the GameBabble Live archive, where we upload the episodes of the show after we finish them. So if you're tuning in late, want to tune in... catch up on old episodes, be sure to hit that up. Just look it up on YouTube. You'll find it. So, before the break, I was talking about the history of the Earth Defense Force series. It got sidetracked. Didn't even really explain the charm of it. Earth Defense Force is a game series where you essentially play the little guys in the model tanks that Godzilla steps on. And it's a very, very low-budget series. And even this most recent release, which is a full-priced game, is still incredibly low budget. And yet I would consider it one of my favorite games of the year already, even though I'm only 6 missions in, because, well, it's Earth Defense Force. And I love Earth Defense Force. But why? Well, the concept behind Earth Defense Force is that you pick your class from now one of 4 different classes. You have the standard ranger, which is just, army dude with a gun, and they can ride vehicles. You've got the wing diver, which is a woman with a jetpack, and she uses energy weapons. She can't get in vehicles, but she can fly. The energy weapons, though, use the same energy pack as her jetpack. You have the air raider, which is a support unit, which can call in vehicles. He has less powerful weapons, but he has access to just all these different vehicles that he can call in. And then you have the fencer, which is like a heavily armored, like, power-suited guy that is really awkward to play as. Like, at first, it seems really slow, and then when you learn how to play a fencer, it's insanely fast. They're basically the advanced class. So you pick your class, and then you pick your weapons from a roster of over 100 weapons that you can unlock. And then you go to one of well over 50 different levels. In fact, it would appear that Earth Defense Force 5 features a whopping 110 levels, as opposed to the mere 89 of Earth Defense Force 4.1. The mere 89. You see what I mean? But the reason why these levels are so plentiful is due to their nature. Because pretty much all the stages in an Earth Defense Force game are, okay, here's a city, here's you, here's a bunch of aliens to blow up, enjoy. Like, they usually use the same city. They build like a big ol', not quite Grand Theft Auto size, but close city. Maybe like I'm gonna say a fifth of a Grand Theft Auto size city, right? But it's fully destructible, and they'll just plop you in some specific location of that city and go, okay, here's a bunch of giant ants. Have fun. And that's the way every mission is. It's just get through this gigantic wad of enemies and a couple waves of them, and then you move on to the next one. It's not particularly complex. There's no iron sights. There's no cover system. It's just you, gun, point, shoot, make the aliens go away. But the aliens are all based on, well, pretty much classic sci-fi movies. You always start with the giant ants, right? And I love them because they're not stylized at all. That was one of the things that Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon screwed up. It tried to make the ants, like, cool and extraterrestrial. No! Just make them look like ants! And that's what Earth Defense Force does. They're just giant ants. And then they send in the giant spiders, and the UFOs, and the giant wasps, and the War of the Worlds tripods, which come in two flavors. You've got, the regular legged ones, then you have the tentacled tripods. And then they start sending in Godzilla, and Mechagodzilla, and giant robots. And Earth Defense Force 2 had millipedes. They had giant centipedes that could be broken apart, just like the game Centipede. They crawled all over buildings. This one, I know, has giant frogs in spacesuits, so that's interesting. And so on. Like, in Earth Defense Force 2017, they actually had this massive robot that dropped giant robots, and it shot a giant cannon that just leveled huge swaths of the city. And that's the charm of the game. It's very much an emergent sort of game. You're sitting there, you're running around, you're shooting at these aliens, and you're watching the city fall apart around you. You might even use your own, like, rocket launcher to take out a building to get it out of your way, so you have a clear shot at the aliens. And it is amazing, fighting off this alien invasion and seeing the entire city leveled in front of you. Now, as you do this, the enemies are dropping weapon boxes. And at the end of the stage, you pick up those weapon boxes, and you're given a random weapon. And you slowly unlock over 100 weapons per class. But here's the twist. Every single stage has multiple difficulty levels. The higher the difficulty level, the better the drops. So it's quite common to get a little ways into the game and then go back to, like, stage 1 or 2 or 3 and crank it up to max difficulty. And those get absurd. But the game is super fun because of this, because it's so simplistic and so pure. Every single entry in the series has 2-player split screen. EDF5 is no exception. And they've recently added in 4-player online co-op, technically starting with Insect Armageddon and being not crap in Earth Defense Force 2025 and 4.1. And now, here we are, Earth Defense Force 5 once again. Now, here's the interesting thing about this series. It's something that I think is very important to point out. Earth Defense Force reboots every 2 games, it looks like. Earth Defense Force 1 and 2 were related, and then Earth Defense Force 3 was a reboot of the series. 2017 was a reboot. 2025, Earth Defense Force 4, that one continued from 2017. But Earth Defense Force 5, once again, reboots everything. Why do they do this? Well, that would be because a lot of the charm of these games is the alien invasion. You know, Earth is just sitting there. We've never had an alien encounter. What the heck? Where did these giant ants come from? Oh no, they're aliens. What do? We weren't prepared for this. This is sort of the arc that every Earth Defense Force game likes to take. And there's this great sense of struggle as you watch cities be destroyed around you as you're fighting this hopeless fight against these alien invaders. And then eventually muster up the ability to barely fend them off. Stuff like that feels so good. And so they can't keep going from the same plot. And indeed, every single time they come up with a new name for the alien invaders. Like, I think they were just invaders in 1 and 2 for at least their U.S. name. They always change the name for the U.S. because the Japanese names could be taken very much the wrong way. Because they're all, like, weird jokes on the concept of... Look, in Earth Defense Force 3 and 4, 2017 and 2025, in Japan, the aliens are actually called foreigners. But not gaijin. They're not using the Japanese word for foreigner. They literally say foreigner in English. Foreigner. So, you get what I mean? Because foreigner could be another word for alien. Yeah, they do another one of those for Earth Defense Force 5. But yeah, for Earth Defense Force 2017 and 2025, they called them the Ravagers for the U.S. I believe they went with Invaders for Earth Defense Force 2 got a PSP release. Forgot to mention that. Or was it? No, Vita. A Vita release. It got an enhanced Vita release. And they called them Invaders in that one, I believe. And then these ones for Earth Defense Force 5 are called Primers. And yeah, it is kind of interesting. I know some people are disappointed that it doesn't have the Earth Defense, it doesn't have the same song for the Earth Defense Force to sing, and they don't constantly say giant insects. They prefer to say monsters over and over again in this one. But I really, really, really want to applaud the translation crew on Earth Defense Force 5 for not giving in to the memes. When it comes to Earth Defense Force, I actually want as pure of a translation as possible. And it would be so easy, so very easy, to working designs the crap out of this. To shoehorn in little movie references or quotes from video games. Like, you know, I've been fighting... they constantly refer to the aliens right now in the early part of the game as monsters. And so, sure enough, one of the things the NPCs can scream is, "Die, monster!" But they never follow up with, "You don't belong in this world." Nor, "You don't belong on this planet." Which would have been really easy to do, but they restrained themselves. And I actually applaud this. Because if you have too much fun there, if you get too jokesy, you do ruin the effect of Earth Defense Force. You ruin the sincerity of the cheese. Because that's the thing. The cheese in Earth Defense Force is very sincere, and it makes it, weirdly, one of the most compelling games. I forget who it was, but someone on YouTube actually did a video talking about how he felt the storytelling in Earth Defense Force 4 was some of the best out there because of its emergent nature. And I completely agree. I felt the same way about 2017. You know, because, like, one of the things is you do have, like, army members running alongside you, fighting with you against these invading aliens, and each one of them will say, random phrases. They actually, they talk. And those helpers can get killed. And they're talking a lot early in the stage, but once they get wiped out, you notice the silence. And as you watch the buildings get destroyed, you notice the destruction. And there's a really great sense of just being all alone, facing off against an impossible alien threat. Earth Defense Force can be unexpectedly dramatic. And there's something amazing about this thing that's essentially cheesy old sci-fi movie simulator, and how it can present those cheesy movies from a new viewpoint because, hey, now you have to survive the alien invasion. Now you have to survive the giant ants. You have to survive the tripods. You have to survive Godzilla. Don't get stepped on, good luck. You are a person on foot fighting Godzilla, good luck to you. Now, Earth Defense, that is just Earth Defense Force in general. From what little I've played of 5, what do I think? Well, I noticed that it definitely has a little bit more narrative. At the start, there is a tutorial mission, which is you being a civilian in the Earth Defense Force base when all of a sudden the giant ants start invading and people are like, what the heck? What are these ants? Where did they come from? Is this a biological weapon from another country? Is the world going to war? What's going on? And like the narrative for the first chunk of the game is, don't worry, we'll get you to safety. And one of the interesting things is that for apparently the first 15 missions, you are in crappy armor. Like you just, like, if you're playing a fencer, you just look like a construction worker. If you're playing a ranger, you just look like a police officer. And then about 15 stages in, you get your real armor. At least that's what I'm hearing, and certainly the screenshots would back that up. And, one of the things that, the game definitely still has frame rate issues. That's just always going to be a thing, but it's not as bad as it used to be. I noticed a very nice lighting. The graphics have been upgraded. And a major focus on those NPCs. See, in Earth Defense Force 2017 and 2025, your fellow members of the army were useless. They were there to die. The best they did was distract the aliens. Here they put up a fight. They are a legitimate resistance. They actually help you. They actually take out the aliens. And you see them in significant numbers, marching and having vehicles and fighting back. So that is a very significant change. I noticed that the ants actually get their exoskeleton blown off as you shoot at them. I also noticed a dynamic splatter effect. Because when I shot those ants, it left a big streaky giant ant blood splatter across the ground. Probably a good thing they stopped using red blood by this point. Like I said, it is a reboot of the invasion. We are fighting the primers instead of the Ravagers. So that part is new. For the most part, though, the gameplay is very similar. I will say Earth Defense Force 5 is way easier. They have made a lot of concessions. Like, this time there's no friendly fire. Like, I would almost say they gel-proofed the game. There's no friendly fire. And one of the biggest problems I had was blowing myself up with my own rockets and getting in front of my teammates and getting blown up. This happened frequently to me in Earth Defense Force. But I will say there are way more health drops. On most difficulties, there's no friendly fire. And even if you lose a mission, you still get a percentage of your pickups. Now, all of this changes on higher difficulties. So basically the lower difficulties are way easier than even the easy mode in old EDFs. But Inferno is still Inferno. Inferno, you have friendly fire. Inferno, if you don't complete the mission, you don't get your goods. In Inferno, the game isn't nice anymore. But that lack of friendly fire is probably a large part of why the army is actually useful in this game. Because I'm going to be blunt, I use very, very large explosive weapons, and they tend to get in the way. I'm also going to say that actually, that's probably because I bought the special edition. You can get, different cores for your, wing divers, which adjusts how their energy recharges. And right now, like I said, I went ahead and bought the one that had all that would come with all the DLC because I love Earth Defense Force. I know I'm going to buy it anyway. So, and that one gave me a core that's really helping me stay in the air and not run out of energy nearly as badly as I used to. I also noticed they tweaked, they've done some new things with some of the guns, like the plasma launcher on the wing diver. Instead of just constantly firing off big blasts, now you have to charge it up and release. So you could do these little spurts that barely do any damage or charge it all the way up and fire. And I'm betting there's going to be one that doesn't require that charge up. I don't know. We're going to see. It looks like they've added some new weapon properties. I'm very excited to see how things progress. I know a lot of people are probably going to pick this game up and go, this feels like a reskin of Earth Defense Force 4.1. And at its core, it kind of is. But in a lot of ways, that's also a good thing, because since they're not rebuilding 100% from the ground up, that means they get to port over a lot of the base enemies and add more new enemies. And that's the most important thing. The more enemy types in an Earth Defense Force, the better. That's why Earth Defense Force 2 was widely regarded as the best, because it had the largest number of enemy types for the longest time. I am so happy to see proper Godzillas back in the game. I know they're coming. I look forward to shooting them in the face and getting stepped on. And I've seen some weird things. I'm pretty sure there's some transforming robots in here that I have to fight. There's some interesting things. So I look forward to seeing what the game has in store. In general, but like I said, the character models, they look like crap. It's very glitchy. No one's mouth moves. It's still an incredibly basic, low-budget game that is being sold for way too high of a price. Doubly so because it's digital only in America, which I don't even... Why wouldn't you give this a physical release? Earth Defense Force has a significant cult following. Making it digital only feels like shooting yourself in the foot. And again, there's like no advertisement for this game. It kind of came out of nowhere for me, especially coming out, immediately after Smash. But here it is. I got my Earth Defense Force. So, unfortunately, with me saying that means it is time for us to take that break before rounding out to the final section of the show where we will talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And there's one thing I want to do for the final show of the year. I'm going to see if I can still squeeze it in here. I wanted to recap as many failures of 2018 as possible. Because, oh egad, the AAA gaming market has been dropping the ball like crazy. You know what? After the break, we're going to start with that, and then we're going to go into Smash. Because I'm going to try to do it as fast as possible. But this isn't even all the failures of the year. But this year has been amazing in terms of AAA gaming, just failures and screwery. And I'm thinking the market crash is coming soon. Which, at this point, a lot of gamers are actually excited for. Because the AAA gaming market is a dumpster fire. But until then, though, like I said, we need to take a break. So here is Just My Type by the Vamps here on 89.5 FM, KCFE The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for just a little more of the last episode of GameBabble Live for the year. Thank you so much for listening. That was A Little Honey by Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Suite here on 89.5 FM, KCFE The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to the final GameBabble Live of the year. But we'll be back next year, so stay tuned to the GameBabble YouTube channel and the GameBabble Live archive to find out when the show will begin again. That's right. In case you're tuning in late, missed the show, want to know what's going on, remember, we are archiving all the episodes on YouTube. Just search up GameBabble Live Archive. You should be able to find our archive of well over 60 different episodes of the show, which you can listen to there on YouTube or download the MP3 files off my Google Drive. So, with this being the last episode of the year, I'd like to point out, do something to wrap the year up. And this, my good friends, has been a year of rage. Oh, egad, every single company on the planet has done something horribly stupid this year to embarrass themselves. I have lost my mind nearly every episode of the program, and before we talk about the joy that is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, I'd like to take a quick moment to recap all of 2018's failures that I can remember. First of all, Battlefield 5 launched with nearly all of its modes inaccessible until weeks after launch. It had a lot of bugs and issues and hiccups, and on top of that, they made some controversial decisions, then told fans, if you don't like it, don't buy it, and now the game is utterly tanking and is more than 50% off in a lot of places. Star Wars Battlefront 2, I don't know if this was this year or last year, but screw it, I'm talking about it anyway, was an incredibly pay-to-win game to such a horrifying degree that actual governments around the world started cracking down on loot boxes, and it forced EA to pull the loot boxes out of Star Wars Battlefront 2 before finding a way to re-implement them that wouldn't piss people off so badly. Fallout 76 launched as a buggy, barely functional mess with people constantly being disconnected from servers, running on an ancient, over a decade-old engine that is really showing its wear, removing everything that made people like Fallout, and on top of all of that, the game that it became was essentially just a knockoff of Ark Survival Evolved or Rust, except not as good. And on top of that, if you bought the big, super expensive special edition, instead of getting the canvas bag you were promised, they gave you a crappy nylon bag. Oh, but the people who review the game, they get canvas bags. They get special treatment. If you showed up to our special press event, they get the canvas bags. And then when they finally relented and realized the sheer amount of bad PR they were getting and said, fine, we'll make you the canvas bags, just, sign up on this list. Oh, whoops, we accidentally leaked all your personal information. Good job. Red Dead Redemption 2 bragged about how hard they were overworking their employees. Assassin's Creed Odyssey intentionally nerfed the amount of experience in the game to turn it into a grindy slog to force you to buy the experience booster in order to have any fun with the game. And on that note, I didn't put Shadow of Mordor on here, a game which launched with this horrible loot box microtransaction system, dragging down the game, and eventually they decided to remove it, which forced them to rebalance the game, proving the problem there. Soul Calibur 6 is pretty much just Soul Calibur 4 and 5 recycling content from them, but less of it. It is somehow a game less than a port, with the smallest number of stages in series history, less than half the customization items of Soul Calibur 5, even though they are literally copy-pasted over. Characters that were flagrantly finished, blatantly cut from the game before release, and so on. Dead or Alive 6, meanwhile, is looking to be a flagrantly rushed game thrown together in less than half a year, and will, of course, be missing content, even though it's recycling a hefty chunk from DOA 5. Not as much as Soul Calibur 6 recycles, but pretty similar, and this will likely be the first DOA to really feel like a serious step backwards from its predecessors. Meanwhile, Diablo Immortal is turning out to be, well, a mobile nightmare. Blizzard's big announcement at their big fan convention was, oh, hey, we're making a mobile Diablo game that will only be on mobile phones. Don't you guys have phones? So that went over well. Meanwhile, EA is fighting legal battles to keep microtransactions in their games in Europe because various countries are starting to make that illegal. Final Fantasy Dissidia NT was a complete disaster of a launch, sorely lacking in mode. There's no way to play one-on-one. There's no way to play local. It's 3-on-3 online only. Like, there's a way to do one-on-one online through some tomfoolery, but it's really hard. And even then, it's a downgrade from the PSP games, and trying to get 6 people together that can actually play. The game pretty much just flopped, but they released a season pass, so they got to complete all the characters anyway. It's free to play now. Meanwhile, Fighting EX Layer, which I actually like, released in a very incomplete state. And I just remembered another one, and then I forgot it. I was talking about Dissidia NT and Season Pass. Oh, yeah, that's right. The Telltale series of The Walking Dead. Yeah, good job on that one. Telltale ran itself into the freaking ground and darn well nearly left customers high and dry without a conclusion to the series that they bought a season pass for, but thankfully they pulled that one out. They got another company to finish up the last episode of the Walking Dead Telltale series. And then, of course, there's Sony, who has gone completely insane with censorship, censoring even Japanese games, because now Sony Computer Entertainment is an all-American company, and they have to make sure everything applies to world. The point is, Nintendo is censoring games less than Sony, to a significant degree. Shoot, they censored Nekopara so hard it became E-rated, alright? And then they released the PS Classic, which we already talked about earlier in the show. What a year! What a freaking year 2018 has been. It's like everyone's dropping balls. Balls everywhere. The balls are all over the floor. Everyone's dropping balls. There's so many balls on the floor this year that I'm just slipping and sliding all over the place, and I'm going to, hurt myself on all these balls on the floor that all the companies dropped. Good job, everybody. Give yourselves a round of applause. Here comes that next video game crash. Of course, video games as a whole won't crash. I'm just thinking, the time for AAA gaming is coming to an end as they continue to screw up over and over again. Moving on, though. With that out of the way, at least we can talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, a actually completed, well-made game, chock full of content that is really fun and good and makes everyone happy. Almost everyone. Enough people happy. Yes, I picked it up at the midnight launch. We had ourselves a little Smash party. Only one other person showed up, but it didn't matter because it was Smash, and I am happy. So, right now we're still way too early in to tell if this is going to be some kind of a weird disaster in the competitive scene, but I severely doubt it. But right now, the biggest complaints with the game, let's just get that out of the way, because everyone knows, yay, Smash Ultimate, it's awesome. What are the complaints? That's what people want to know. Well, number one, the input lag is a little on the high side. It's not as bad as Brawl, but the game does feel a little slippery and less responsive than it should. It'll be interesting to see if this gets patched out. And the matchmaking online is kind of bad. Now, the netcode, it needs to be said, not terrible, not great. The netcode is a significant improvement over all previous Smash games, but it ain't no GGPO. It ain't perfect. It ain't like the dream netcode. But I was able, to just go online, choose, give me any match, I don't care about rule set, quickly find 3 other people to play against, and I had a very playable 4-player online match, which is more than I could ever say about Super Smash Bros. On Wii U, so that is quite nice. The problem is that there is no for glory mode. Because in Wii U, you had 4 Fun and 4 Glory, and 4 Glory was your ranked mode, where you played with these really strict rules, and it was only one-on-one and stuff. Now you can actually, choose all these rule settings and parameters for exactly how you want to play, but there's not nearly enough, wildcard choices for, I don't really care, just give me anything. And that's certainly gumming up the proceedings and making it hard for people to sometimes find online matches with their preferred one-on-one rule sets. The way a lot of people are handling it is they're just making match rooms and letting people come in and challenge them. They stream on Twitch. It's like, come at me, bro. And then people come at them. But, yeah. So the online matchmaking could use some tweaks. Netcode's alright. Could use a little less input delay, but it's not as bad as Wii U. So the next question you're going to ask, who's the best, who's the worst? How are they, everyone wants to know the tier lists. It is way too early for tier lists. At this early stage in the game, though, no one feels like crap. Everyone feels viable. But of course, there is one who comes out on top. One who seems like they will be the best character, at least early on. We'll see if they get nerfed. They're not as bad as Diddy Kong or Bayonetta were last game. But King K. Rool, believe it or not, a heavyweight, King K. Rool has clawed his way to the top and is kind of an unstoppable powerhouse because he has projectiles. He has a huge amount of super armor, he does ludicrous damage, and most of all, he has the Kremlin copter. His up B move, his recovery move, is basically the villager's balloon fight move, where he can just fly, except it's a helicopter, and the blades have a hitbox. So, you try to spike K. Rool, you try to down smash him away, he'll just helicopter you. You better bring Simon and Richter, because K. Rool's going to be very mean to you. On that note, Simon and Richter are definitely up there. They're a little lacking in recovery, but they do stupid damage. They have a slightly larger moveset than other characters due to their, kick vault and the fact that they can do diagonal whips. Their whips are, the longest range smashes in the game, and the axe, oh egad, the axe can smash. Like, you can just knock people out by throwing an axe at them, and they will fly off the screen. This brings us to one of the new additions to the game, which is critical. Well, it's not really a new addition, but it's been significantly upgraded, and that's critical hits. Basically, once you get below 150%, once you get to 150% damage or higher, the chance of a smash just nearly instant KOing you goes up exponentially, and I get why they did this. Most of the new characters, most of the new additions are heavyweights, and heavyweights have traditionally been very bad in Smash. And there are so many characters in Smash that have ludicrously good recovery from Brawl and Wii U that it starts to become unfair. So they were like, we need to do something to buff the heavies. Well, now it is way more plausible to just deal damage and punch people out of the ring instantaneously. This also speeds up matches, which is something Smash desperately needed. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the long run. World of Light, the single-player mode, is definitely iffy. It's very low on plot. It's mostly just a weird challenge adventure mode that has a sphere grid for some reason. And I know a lot of people look at it and go, man, I wish they'd just give us another Subspace Emissary. And while I agree with that, I understand why they didn't. I would like everyone to please take a minute to remember Subspace Emissary was a big, meaty game mode. That meant it took an excessive amount of resources to make Subspace Emissary, which was a game mode you were going to go through maybe once or twice. That was the problem. You don't want to spend that much on making the single-player mode. But at the same time, Smash on Wii U's biggest problem was its lack of single-player. So Smash Ultimate definitely fixed that. And World of Light is good for a thrown-together single-player mode. It's big, it's long, the challenges can be annoying, but they're interesting. It's neat to see how they handled some of them. However, Classic mode is where it's at. Just the standard mode where you go through a couple fights and then fight a boss. Guess what? That's character-specific now. Every single character in the game has their own unique Classic mode. Like, Wii Fit Trainer only fights the fat characters. Richter fights all the Echo fighters, and Simon has my favorite. His is called Smashvania, because they have titles for all of them as well. And when you play through the game with Simon, in his Classic mode, it only chooses, dark castle stages and only pits you up against monstrous opponents, and it plays Castlevania music for every fight. And then at the end, instead of fighting Master Hand, you fight Dracula, who has both of his forms. On top of that, you get to choose the difficulty level. And I love the way they handled this. Basically, you choose the starting difficulty level. The highest you can do is 5.0. Max difficulty is 9.9. But you can't go to 9.9. The highest you can start at is 5.0, and the better you do, the higher the difficulty level goes up. But if you ever lose, you either spend your in-game currency and go down a difficulty level when you continue, or you spend your rare gold ticket to keep the difficulty. They make the difficulty a reward. So if all you want to do is just unlock characters super fast and go through these different modes, you can set it to the easiest difficulty, run through it, it's fine. But if you want a challenge and you want good rewards, you gotta crank that difficulty up. And basically it makes going to the hardest difficulty a challenge in and of itself, and turns it into a reward as well, which I thought was just a brilliant idea. I love how it's handled. It's very nice. Now, it's at this point that I need to say, if anyone still thinks Smash Ultimate is a port of Smash on Wii U, you are a complete idiot. I know Smash Ultimate is built off of Smash 4. But Smash 4 was built off of Brawl, Brawl was built off of Melee. This is nothing new. Dead or Alive 5 is built off of Dead or Alive Dimensions, which is built off of Dead or Alive 4, which is built off of Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate, which is built off of Dead or Alive 3, which is built off of Dead or Alive 2, which is built off of Dead or Alive 1, which is built off of Virtua Fighter 2. Do you want to argue that Dead or Alive 5 is a port of Virtua Fighter 2? Let's not even get into Soul Calibur 6 and the sheer amount of recycled content and engine bits and pieces from that. It is very common, especially for 3D fighters, for games to be built off of their predecessor. But Smash Ultimate, the difference is massive. But you don't notice it because Smash on Wii U looked good enough. The camera's so zoomed out and it's so frantic you don't notice the drastic increase in graphical fidelity. But there are some comparison videos on YouTube, and I highly recommend you look them up. Because once you do, you just go, oh, well, I feel like an idiot. In fact, I think this is the first time they've ever touched up the visuals on Hyrule Temple. Hyrule Temple is one of my favorite stages, and I swear they've just copy-pasted it from Melee every single time. Now they've added a lot more texture and detail. It looks nice. To say nothing of the character models, like, a lot of characters look a lot beefier. They're a lot more detailed. Definite graphical improvement. It is very noticeable when you put them side by side. That's the thing. Not putting them side by side, it looks like a port. Put them side by side, no, this is not a port. Play is great. Loving it. I do think the controls were a little better in the Wii U one. But last thing I need to mention, because we do need to wrap up the show, is 8-player Smash, which is still there and has been de-emphasized, and I think this is a good thing. I think 8-player Smash was the greatest addition they ever made to Super Smash Bros. Not because you want to actually play 8 players, although I love the chaos. I love being able to play a game 8 players. I love the more the merrier. I love playing games with the largest number of people possible. But 8-player Smash kind of ruffled some feathers. But before I get to that, the real purpose of 8-player Smash isn't to play 8-player, though. It's to play 5-player and 6-player and 7-player. It's so that way you don't have that odd man out who has to sit there and wait. No, you can play 5-player. And that's really enjoyable. It's great that no one has to sit out when you play Smash unless you actually manage to get 9 people together for Smash who all want to play at once. But the problem on Wii U was that so much of Classic Mode kept giving you 8-player Smash stages. They were so proud of their 8-player Smash that it was just, you had a lot of fights against 7 opponents, and it was completely unfair. Smash Ultimate fixes this. They almost never give you more than 3 opponents. Sometimes 4, sometimes 5, but they almost never give you a full 8-player Smash match. It is incredibly rare. They try to keep it to 4 players. And they don't even have like an 8-player Smash button on the main menu. But you can add players up to 8 players. You can still do 8-player Smash. You can apparently do it on all the stages. But yeah, they did it right. It's still there, it's de-emphasized, but it is very useful if you want to have more than 4 players. And they do have System Link. You can play, because of course it's also portable, so that way you can, just link your Switch to your opponent's Switch and fight them. Well, guess what? You could have multiple players on each Switch. So you can have 4 players on your Switch, 4 players on a friend's Switch, link them together, fight them out, or any other combination thereof. Unfortunately, you cannot do the co-op classic mode through System Link, but aside from that, very good. So, all in all, I have greatly enjoyed Smash Ultimate. It has been a blast, and so has been doing, that was a sentence, GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show for 2018. Thank you so much for listening. This is our last show of the year. We will not be back next week. We're going on break, having a good time, but stay tuned to the GameBabble YouTube channel, wherein I will still be, I will try to get an episode up, try to get that sorted out. I will definitely be doing streams, and I will keep you all posted for when we come back next year. But until then, thank you very much for joining us. It has been a blast. But now, I have to leave you. So here is Be Sure by Clockwork, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. See you next year.